Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Shakaar, which is episode 24 of season 3 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, one episode at a time. In this video, I cover the third season episode, Shakaar. So Shakaar is the episode in which the First Minister of Bajor passes away, and Kai Winn is elected to the office, and temporarily, however, it's looks like she's going to win the next election as she's unopposed. And she orders Kira to go speak with her old resistance leader, Shakaar, who has the farming equipment that's very important to a project that will allow Bajor to export goods, but he is refusing to give it up. And so she asked Major Kira to go and try to negotiate for its release. So Kira goes and reminisces with Shakaar and her old resistance buddies, and she does try to convince him to give up the farming equipment, but he refuses, but he agrees to meet with Kai Winn. However, when Kira tries to arrange the meeting, Kai Winn kind of tricks her and just tries to arrest Shakaar outright, and Kira, feeling betrayed, goes off with Shakaar and his little group, and they sort of start a rebellion where they refuse to give the farming equipment and they hide from the authorities, and there's a risk of a civil war brewing. Right when battle's about to break out between the two Bajoran factions, Shakaar and Kira manage to negotiate an agreement in which Shakaar will run for the office of First Minister, and Winn will back out and not even run against him, and if she does, then they will expose the fact that she risked a civil war over some farming equipment. And Winn does back down so that Shakaar will eventually become the First Minister. There's also a side plot on the station about O'Brien being in the zone because he's doing really well at darts. So, let's start with the A plot. I think this is probably the last real Bajoran episode of Deep Space Nine, episode in which Deep Space Nine focuses more on the internal politics of Bajor. I mean, there's a couple more episodes, but pretty much most of the episodes, especially season 5 onward, deal with the Power Wraiths. Like, whenever they get the Bajor, it's no longer about Bajoran culture or Bajoran internal conflicts or Bajor trying to survive, or after the occupation, is either about the Prophets or the Power Wraiths, or sometimes about the conflict between the Prophets and the Power Wraiths. And I mean, you have episodes in the 5th season like Rapture, which is about Bajor trying to join the Federation, but that's mainly about the Prophets. And and you have, I guess, Indiscretion in season 4, which is about Bajor and Cardassia working together to recover her ship, but that's not really about Bajoran internal politics. This is something that dominated the show for the first 2 seasons, especially season 1. Most of the episodes dealt with Bajor internal politics and how it's trying to recover from the occupation. Of course, season 2 opened with a 3-episode arc in which I don't think they went far enough. And apparently I did hear quotes from the writers that whenever people proposed ideas that had to do with Bajoran internal politics or internal conflicts to Bajor, those ideas were rejected because in later seasons, I should say, because it was seen as, oh, we've already been there, done that, and we're kind of moving beyond that, which I feel like they should have kept up with it. Because here's the thing. As much as I do like the Circle trilogy, they never went far enough with it. Like, they never really got into huge detail over exactly what Bajor is going through to recover from the occupation, and what is going through to join the Federation, which apparently Ira Stephen Bear purposely sabotaged, that he never wanted Bajor to join the Federation, which I think he was objectively wrong about, but that's a topic I can get into in another time. I don't know if that manifested itself yet in this episode. Because they were still presenting Kai Winn endangering the possibility of Bajor joining the Federation as a bad thing. But anyway, this episode was kind of a repeat of the Circle trilogy, because it also presented a situation where Bajor almost broke out into civil war. And just like the Circle trilogy, I don't think they went far enough to explore this idea and explain the different factions. That was my one complaint about the Circle trilogy, is that they spent the whole third episode having characters say goodbye to each other when they knew they would see each other again in the next episode, instead of actually taking the time to explore the different factions and explore the conflict and explore the politics more. Whereas here, it just seemed like, it was a small group of people who were running away from the government with this farming equipment, and the next thing you know, they're talking about, a civil war could break out. People are already choosing sides. Like, I get there would be some people who would agree with Shakaar and think that the government's overreaching, but I don't really see that they'd be willing to go to war over it. They didn't really. Here's the problem, is that at the start of the episode, they made it clear that Kai Winn was super popular, and that's why she was elected first minister. But if she's super popular, it doesn't seem like there'd be that many people willing instantly to go to war against her. That seems like story whiplash. Now, I get, especially right now as I'm recording this video, I get the idea that people who may have supported her at first, once they see her in office and see what she does, that they would turn against her. I get that. But not to the point of them being willing to start a civil war over it. Like, that just seems too far. And, I just think that this whole storyline is a bit, much like the Circle one, is underdeveloped. And I think that's why they avoided Bajoran conflict episodes in the future, because, they were never successful. But I would say that's a reason why they should have revisited it, because they needed to do it correctly. They needed to go into more detail, and plus there would be a new dynamic in later seasons with, the Dominion War and the effect that had on Bajor. And it feels like we didn't really see Bajor's side of things, other than the mythical fight between the Pal Race and the Prophets. And I think that's a whole other thing I could get into. And I think that was a mistake. But anyway, so we meet Shakaar in this episode. I think it's really dumb that they say that Shakaar Resistance was named after one man, because the Shakaar Resistance was or the Cell, I should say, was a reference from my favorite episode of the franchise, Duet, where Maritza did his research and he found out that Kira belonged to the Shakaar Resistance. And I even said, I think in my deep dive, revisited of that episode that I don't believe when that episode was made that they meant for Shakaar to be a person. Like, I think it's, from the context, it seems like it's a Bajoran word for, like, resistance or for freedom or for, something like that. That it's a word. It's a Bajoran word. It's not, like, some dude's name. And I think it kind of, I don't know, it's a very minor nitpick, I suppose, but it just always annoyed me how they're like, no, it's actually a guy named Shakaar. And I'm like, nah. Do they really name the resistance cells after their leaders? That seems pretty dumb. I don't know, because then the Cardassians know who to go after more. I don't know. That just, yeah. I was just never, it's not a huge thing, but it's something I've just never been okay with. Now, as for the character of Shakaar himself, the Space Ghost from Sub Rosa, well, to be fair, I think he is better in this episode. I mean, that's not a high bar, though, but I do think he's definitely better in this episode than he was in Sub Rosa. He is an interesting character. He's a nuanced character. That I love how he's like willing to negotiate, and he's like, when he knows Kira's there to try to get the equipment back, yet he's still like, it's great to see you, and still wants to reminisce, and doesn't outright like shove her away. Like, I love that. I think that's great. But the actor is kind of a handsome man type actor, and I talked about what I mean by handsome man. I don't mean like hot, like men who are hot or sex appeal like Ryan Gosling or something like that. That's not what I mean. He's not handsome, he's hot. He's a hunk. That's different. Handsome to me is more like the soap opera types, the the kind of 80s 90s soap opera, like chiseled chest, and goes like all uptight. To me, that's a handsome man, and that's what he comes off as to me. And he's very like artificial, very like, to me, a prime example of the handsome man stereotype is the Captain Sheridan from Babylon 5. Like, that's the handsome man. He just has that chiseled, that artificial way of speaking, and that's what I get from Shakaar as well, which again is different than like a hunk or someone who's hot. Like, that's something totally different. But anyway, that's just my narrow definition. But anyway, so yes, I was never that big of a fan of the character of Shakaar. I think he's okay in this episode. Later, which I believe he only has 2 other appearances, although he's mentioned a lot, I like him a lot less. But I'll get to that when we get to the later episodes. I think he's fine in this episode. It's an interesting character. But more than that, I like the Pharrell Lupasa, the other members of Kira's cell. I think it was very interesting. They're very lively, very sort of eccentric, very standout characters, and I think the actors who portray them do a really good job, and I love the dynamic of seeing Kira and them, the 4 of them together. And it's interesting that Kira is sort of getting back to her, seeing her reminisce with the people that she was entrenched in resistance with, and seeing how different things are from them now that the 3 of them are farmers, and they're proud of Kira, who's off, the first officer of the station, and then talking about the days they were in the resistance. Like, that's very interesting stuff. That's really getting into her history, which fleshes out her character more. And I think those 2 characters in particular are fascinating, which is why I'm so, spoilers, but I'm so upset that they kill him off in the very next episode, and I have a lot of issues with that episode, but I'll get to it when I get to that episode. Yeah, so that aspect of it was good. I totally bought the fact that Kira would be willing to work with Kai Winn at first, because she kind of agreed with her goals, but then when she, betrayed him and was being completely unreasonable, totally bought that Kira would be like, no, screw this. I am going against it. So that all was great. I did love that. I also like the scene with Cisco and Winn. It did sort of exemplify just how terrible Winn was at her job. And yeah. And how Cisco is like, no, I'm not going to help you send Starfleet security forces like that. Violates the Prime Directive, where in fact is specifically not allowed to do that. And she's like, oh, fine, well, we're just going to break off relations with the Federation. And he's like, you're overreacting. And quite frankly, this entire situation is one big overreaction, and it's absolutely true. And because this is the main character trait for Winn, which is what I've always said, is the only thing she's interested in is power. And so she wants more power, she grabbed more power, and when people defy her power, she wants to punish them at all costs, and it's becoming more about that than it is about the situation. Like, she probably doesn't even give a shit about the farming equipment anymore. It's become more about, how dare you defy my order, therefore I'm going to do everything possible to arrest you. And by doing that, she's about to cause a civil war because she's a terrible leader, and she only cares about her power and nothing else. And I love how Cisco points that out. And then the ending, is a little bit anticlimactic, but I did kind of like it when they corner those other Bajoran people, but they talk about, he was actually, renowned resistance leader and blah, 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 and they all have respect for them, and then they come down and negotiate and say, look, we don't like this. We don't think we should be killing each other. I didn't fight the Cardassians off just so we could kill other Bajorans. Although it's kind of, again, not acknowledging the whole circle thing that already happened, but you guys see how that's old news. But and then it had that one guy who would start shooting, and he was the leader was like, get him out of here, strip his rank away, take his weapon, but it was illustrated just how volatile the situation is. And Kira even pointed out, the next time someone starts shooting, they might not be able to stop, and not just here but everywhere. And so so they come up with the easy compromise of Shakaar running for First Minister. It does feel like he agreed to that super easily. That his whole job was to arrest him, and instead he comes back and he's not arrested, he's going to run against you. I get that they're trying to de-escalate, but it seems like he is giving too much into the other side. He's basically allowing Shakaar to win. So, I don't know. There was something a little bit unsatisfying about how easy that ending was and just how fast it happened. So let me talk about the side plot, I guess. Well, no, before I get to the side plot, there's the one point of fact is that Shakaar and Kira did not begin a romance in this episode. That actually happened later. But one was actually hinted at because she was lighting the candle for Portrayal, but at the end of the episode she stopped doing it. Kind of like, after she spent time with Shakaar, she's now moving on. So there's some implications there. But anyway. Okay, so let's move to the B plot, which I do not have a whole lot to say about because it is pretty much a nothing. It's I don't think it's even worthy of being called a plot. It's just a collection of scenes with O'Brien playing darts and saying he's in the zone, and then making some jokes and some humorous comments about how he's in the zone, and that's it. There's nothing more to it. I think it was one of the most throwaway, useless side plots that Deep Space Nine has. Now, Deep Space Nine, as I said, their thing is not to do the anomaly bullshit, that's what TNG and Voyager does. But what Deep Space Nine does is that they'll often have a side plot of a character story on the station where people are going around doing things. And I talked about some that I really liked that the season had, like the one they had with Bashir and O'Brien getting drunk, and O'Brien or Bashir sort of avoiding that other woman who he used to know. And so that was, and there have been some other really good side plots, but there's been some lazy ones as well, like the Bashir being nominated for an award or whatever. And this is even worse than that, I think. The whole I'm in the zone. It's just a waste of time. It's it's almost the equivalent of an anomaly bullshit thingy, because it's instead of being there to create a threat, which it's not, it's just there to eat up time. Obviously they didn't have enough, with the Kira plot to take up a whole episode, and plus they want to show the other characters. They want to make sure all the other main cast members get their screen time because they're getting paid regardless, apparently. And so they did this whole bullshit with them playing darts, and so I didn't really get the ending where O'Brien reaches to grab the drink, and he breaks his arm, dislocates his shoulder. That was ridiculous. In fact, I thought when I first saw that scene that O'Brien was faking it, that he did it on purpose to fuck with Quark, because you had an earlier scene where he's like, oh, I want to go kayaking in Holosuite. And Quark's like, no, you can't do that. You're going to hurt your shoulder. You're in the zone. You can't do anything for that shoulder. And then he, dislocates his shoulder, and the next thing he's going to Quark's like, how about that Holosuite program? And he's like, yeah, okay. I think it would have made way more sense if O'Brien did that on purpose to fuck with Quark, because he was sick of playing darts and he wanted to do all this shit. So he had him and Bashir went in on it and faked the injury, then blamed it on Quark because he was the one passing the drink. But the episode never says that. They try to pass it off like that was actually happened, and I'm sorry. I know it's aggravating an old injury, but still, someone dislocating their shoulder just by leaning back to grab a drink is fucking stupid. I'm not to say it never could happen, but it comes off as silly in a fictional episode like this. So, did not particularly care for this B plot. So another thing I have to talk about is that this is the first episode where the music was composed by Paul Bajoran. And this is something I never really realized before until just now, going through the episodes, doing the research. I never heard the name Paul Bajoran before, but I looked up all the episodes that he did music on. So this is the first episode, as I said, but he would go on to do music for Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. And I looked up the episodes that he did music on, and it kind of tracked, because I realized that I don't like his music. I don't like this, the kind of music composed. And this is, as I said, this is something that I realized on a subconscious level before, because I've talked a lot about the music because I love Dennis McCarthy's music. He's the best composer, I think, for Star Trek, and I think his music is great. Ron Jones is a bit overrated, but I still like his music. And then there's also Jay Chataway, who I think gets more hate than he deserves. I think Jay Chataway is fine. Maybe a bit more bland than Dennis McCarthy, not quite as good. And we have a few other guest music composers here and there. There'll be several more who will join Star Trek in later seasons of DS9, Voyager, and Enterprise. But those are like the big ones. And I'll talk about David Bell as well, who does a lot of the Dominion War stuff. And his stuff is kind of all samey. Like, he doesn't really have much range when it comes to Star Trek music. And I didn't really care much for his music on Voyager. I thought it worked better in Deep Space Nine than I did on Voyager. But Paul Bajoran is the first one I come across who's like, flat out, I don't like the music. And this is something I knew on a subconscious level when I was watching certain episodes. I don't think I noticed this so much on this episode. I definitely noticed on episodes like Children of Time, where the music on a subconscious level makes me think less of the episode. Like, I'm not really aware of it until I really think about it. And then so once I looked up all the episodes he did music for, I'm like, oh no, yeah, this totally tracks the music on all those episodes suck. And that's not to say they're all bad. Like, there's some good episodes that he did music for, so I would like the music, I would like the episode despite the music, not because of it. But I think if there's an episode that I already am not too sure about or don't like very much, the music could definitely bring it down. For me. And so, yeah, I noticed that straight away when I watched this episode. I was like, wait, there's that music I don't like. Who is it? And yeah, sure enough, this is the first episode Paul Bajoran did music for. And yeah, I don't know how to describe it. I'm not very articulate when it comes to music. I'm not sure how to describe it just feels kind of wishy-washy, I suppose. It doesn't really contribute anything. It just, to me, it kind of brings down the feel of the episode. So, alright, so let me name some of the episodes he did. So, it starts with Shakaar, and then he did Little Green Men, The Muse. The Muse. And then Let He Who Is Without Sin. Oh, that's actually another episode where that's a terrible episode, but that's another one where I noticed, like, the music sucks. Like, that's something I actively noticed when I was watching it, but it, like, makes it even worse. And then Children of Time, which I already mentioned. Waltz. That's a decent episode. That's a good episode despite the music, but when I think about it, it's like, yeah, the music's not that good. Valiant, yeah, actually I do recall the part of the music being bad, which is part of what makes that episode even worse. The Siege of AR-558. So I think that might be an exception, like, because the classical music they play at the end is kind of good, but the music throughout most of the episode is that same blandness. And When It Rains, which is a really good episode, it's part of the finishing arc, but I do remember, like, the music kind of annoying me a bit in that episode. So that's Deep Space Nine. So Voyager, they did Life Science, which I like. I don't remember the music being bad, so I'll have to go back and listen to it when I get to it. Alter Ego, which is a terrible episode, and so tracks that has terrible music. Unity, I don't remember the music in Unity being bad, so again, I'll have to go back. Darkling, terrible episode, so I'm sure the music was bad as well. Mortal Coil, yeah, I think I could picture his music being in that episode, but I actually think it kind of fit in that episode. I don't know. Again, I'll have to rejudge it. Message in the Bottle, I don't remember his music being in that episode. Omega Directive, same thing. 30 Days, yes, I remember the music being terrible in 30 Days. Latent Image, I don't remember the music. Course Oblivion, I just watched like a month ago, and I think even then I noticed, like, yeah, this is bad music. I was like, hey, I think this is what got me primed for like it, and so when I saw Shakaar, I was like, yeah, here's that bad music again. And then One Small Step, terrible episode, terrible music. Blink of an Eye, amazing episode. I think it's good despite the music. And Good Shepherd, yeah, that's a bad episode, bad music. Live Fast and Prosper, I don't remember his music being in there. Inside Man, Yeah, I don't remember that. Repentance, yeah, I remember. I do remember that having bad music. Q2, I don't remember this music being in there. Friendship 1, this is just a bad episode overall. And for Enterprise, I'll just go through them really quickly. And, the Andorian Incident, Shadows of Bajim, Rogue Planet, Vox Sola. Yeah, I do remember Rogue Planet and Vox Sola having really bad music. Night in Sickbay, Precious Cargo. Jeez, 2 of the worst episodes of the entire franchise right there. The Crossing, First Flight. I hated that episode. Regen, another bad episode. Chosen Realm. Oh, I do remember this bad music being in Chosen Realm. And Hatchery. 2 bad episodes, especially Hatchery. The Forgotten, good episode despite the music. But I do remember it having that bland music. Daedalus, bad episode, bad music. Babel 1, I don't remember bad music being in that episode. And Demons, I don't remember this music being in Demons either, but I didn't particularly care for that episode either way. So anyway, that's all Paul Ballarjan's input in it. So yeah, he's the only composer I've come across on Star Trek where I actively don't like his music. So, one other thing that I really want to get into with this episode, and I was holding back earlier. I was trying to hold myself back, but I want to sort of unleash on it now, and that is the political analogy to modern times. So I will give a warning for anyone who doesn't want to hear, the libtard leftist anti-Trump spiel. Like if you feel like that's gonna bother you, or that's not something you particularly want to hear, you could skip ahead. I put timestamps on. You can skip ahead to skip it. And if it really upsets you to the point of being angry, then you can always unsubscribe from my channel and stop watching me. I wouldn't mind that at all if you're that big of a Trump fan, to be honest. But anyway, so let me begin with my anti-Trump rant. So I always think about that when I think of this episode. For those of you who know Jesse Ginger's channel, a few years back, 2020 to be precise, during the election between Biden and Trump, in which Biden won, which he did win. But anyway, Jesse Ginger put out a video comparing this episode to the election. In fact, it was very obvious. Like, she didn't make it state it like outright. She was being like coy about it and being like, "Oh, I know that Shakaar has his issues. He's not perfect, but then you have Winn, who's like a dictator wannabe." Just the way she was speaking made it obvious that she, even though she was talking about the episode Shakaar, that she was actually referring to the 2020 election. And then Lori wrote it, tried to like sort of piggyback off of that, but do another video where he presented like both sides. He did both sidesism, where he presented both candidates as exactly the same, which is bullshit, which is a false, incorrect way to put it, which is why I hated that video. But the way Jesse Ginger did it, by outright pointing out how Trump was like Kai Winn, was right on the money. It was one of the best videos she's ever done, in my opinion. And I see more analogies to Winn and Trump, particularly when, as I'm recording this video, the biggest constitutional crisis that's going on is Trump has deported a family man who is from the same state I'm from, who's originally from El Salvador, but he is married to an American citizen, has children with her, was granted asylum status, so is legally allowed to be in the U.S., deported him to a gulag torture prison in El Salvador without any due process, just snatched him up, sent him there, And some of the lawyers that worked for Trump, three officials, have confirmed that it was an administrative error. And so the courts, including a unanimous Supreme Court decision, is ordering Trump to return this individual who's wrongly imprisoned there. And Trump is doubling down, pretending like the Supreme Court ruled in his favor, and acting like that guy is a known criminal. They have officials in his administration lying and stating that he was convicted of being a part of this gang, which is not true. It's something that's easy for anyone to look up. And he's refusing and doubling down and say, how dare these Democrats try to get criminals back in our country who don't even belong here. Which he did belong here. He was legally, and he's not a gang member. And apparently there was a police informant that said he was a gang member, but they said that he knew him from New York City, which a place where that person never lived. So the informant was obviously full of shit. But, maybe there's some merit to it. That's why you have due fucking process. That's why you have a trial, so they can present the evidence and prove that he's a gang member. And by the way, people who are trying to get him back in the country are trying to get him back in the country so he can have his due process, so they can have a trial. Have if the federal government wants to try to prove that that he's guilty, then do it. Do it in court. There's your chance. It's pretty fucking obvious that they don't have any evidence, which is why they're refusing to do this. But anyway, what does this have to do with Shakaar, or Kai Winn specifically, is because it reminded me so much when I was watching this episode of that. Because when Trump is doing the same thing Winn was doing in this episode. Doubling down and not backing down simply because they're power hungry and simply because, oh, how dare you defy me. And that's all. He knows he's wrong. Trump knows for a fucking fact that he's wrong. He's lying outright having everyone in his administration lie about it because he doesn't want to admit he's wrong. He doesn't want to be shown backing up and doesn't want to be shown to have the courts have authority over him. And there's also another element to this too with there could be like torture and death going on in this prison. So if they allow someone who's been there back in the country, they'll report on him, and Trump is trying to avoid that. But that's just a theory. We don't know that part for sure. But anyway, I'm recording this video in advance, so this whole news story might have progressed a lot by the time you see it. But yeah, it's just like Kai Winn. He's just as terrible as a leader as Kai Winn is, and he's being just as reckless. And he's just like Kai Winn is just as much as a dictator wannabe as Trump is. And so that's why it was ridiculous to try to do the whole both sidism. They're both got pros and cons. No, very clearly Shakaar is infinitely better and more competent than fucking Winn. I mean, he's not perfect, so that's why he was a better analogy for Biden, who himself has got a lot of issues and not perfect, but better than the fascist dictator. And that's the point of this episode. Plus, this episode has one of my favorite lines in it, where Odo says, I'm trying to get the line correct, but he says, sometimes I found in my experience, the problem with giving people the freedom of choice is that sometimes they make the wrong choice. And I remember I took a screenshot of that line, like with subtitles, and put it up on my Facebook page, on my Enchantment of Eternity page, when Trump got reelected. That was like, that's the first quote I thought of. Is sometimes the problem with giving people freedom of choice is sometimes they make the wrong choice. And here's the thing. The majority of independents, not the brainwashed cult members, but the majority of independents who voted for Trump are now regretting it. And if all these polls show that his favorability is like down in the gutter. And if they were to rerun the election right now, he would lose easily. But it's too late. And, and so it just emphasizes that whole thing that people make the wrong choice. Even, like, it's not just my opinion, it's the wrong choice. It's now the opinion of the majority of people. Although many, like me, saw it from the beginning that this is a disaster happening, and everything that everyone warned about happening happened. I always thought about making a meme saying Palpatine derangement syndrome, because I don't know if you heard this thing I heard from conservatives about Trump derangement syndrome. You heard it a lot during his first term, and it's like, oh, you guys have an irrational hatred of just a normal politician. And it's frustrating because everything we've been saying about him for years is now absolutely, we've been vindicated, like every single thing about him trying to be a dictator, not giving shit about the rule of law. All of that shit he's proving, and not knowing shit about the economy and trashing the economy and just only caring about his ego. Like, everything is correct. So maybe I should make a meme saying Kai Winn derangement syndrome. Like, you have Kai Winn derangement syndrome. Oh God, she just loves the prophets, and she wants the best for Bajor, and she's a great leader. How dare you? You're crazy thinking that she's just power hungry and irresponsible and incompetent. You have Kai Winn derangement syndrome. That should be the new thing. Anyway, that's so political rant over. So I would now like to thank all those that support me on Patreon's very much appreciated. This helped me continue with the channel. I'd like to give a big special thanks to Brandon Neal Howes and Jordan Johnson. Thank you so much for your strong support. I'd also like to give a shout out to Tyler Cease, Benjamin Mead, Antarius, Greg Marley, Francisco, Chuck Hooks, Kyrie091, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky, Matty Jester, Joel Lavals, Alessandro Miguelicio, Norman Buckwald, Stephen Kennedy, Britton Berg, and Allison Fordyce. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. So we have a few Patreon comments on this episode. First comment is from Tyler Cease, who says, the politics of occupation. Shakaar really delves into the complexities of the occupation and resistance. Kira's involvement with Shakaar's resistance movement offers a great look at her past, and it makes you think about how difficult it can be to transition from a freedom fighter to someone holding office, as she does later in the series. Character growth. The episode highlights some important character growth for Kira as she faces the moral challenges of balancing her idealism with her responsibilities as a Starfleet officer. Is a great reminder of how deeply her past influences her present decisions. The Shakaar Revolution. Shakaar's role as the leader of the resistance makes for an interesting dynamic, especially when paired with Kira. There's this fine line between their personal history and the political pressures they face. It's fascinating to see how both characters navigate that. The Odo and Kira dynamic. Odo's role in this episode is a bit of a standout. His stoic demeanor combined with his loyalty to Kira adds another layer of complexity to the relationship. He's a character that remains professional yet has this undeniable respect for Kira's past. Tensions with the Bajoran government. The Bajoran government struggle with how to handle the post-occupation era is explored here, and its theme that continues to be relevant throughout the series. The idea of balancing ideological purity and the pragmatism of leadership really comes to the forefront. A closer look at Kira's morality. Kira is forced to wrestle with personal values versus the greater good. the dilemma she faces in this episode highlights how, even a heroic character, she's not immune to tough choices. The role of Starfleet. This episode gives an opportunity to reflect on how Starfleet fits into the Bajoran political landscape. The involvement of Starfleet in local politics raises interesting questions about the Federation's role in planetary government. Now, yeah, so to an extent I agree that this was an interesting look at post-occupation Bajor and how they're sort of still a young, struggling government. But I think more than anything, gets the Odo's line about how sometimes people make the wrong choice when given the freedom of choice. And to me, I think that is the overarching theme of the episode, that it was the wrong choice for Winn to become First Minister, because and it shows what happens when someone who's incompetent and not worthy of having the power, how things can fall apart very quickly and devolve when you have someone as power-hungry, greedy, and incompetent in a position of power. Excuse me, something in my throat. Anyway, next comment is from Kyrie091, who says, Shakaar, more like suck hard. I don't know why they always try to shoehorn in romances for Kira. I do like the Odo story that emerges later, but all the other romances that I see for her, it's not that I don't buy them, it's that I don't care. Well, to be fair, there's not really a romance in this episode, as I stated. That will come later in Crossfire in season 4, but you could say this is sort of they're hinting at one, maybe. This is when they first introduce Shakaar, and you see some sparks between them a little bit, kind of, sort of. But yeah, I see that much I don't mind. This is when they turned it into a full romance, that's when it bothered me. And I like Suck Hard, though. That's a good one. Anyway, next comment is from Antarius, who says, I watched some videos that claim that Bashir being genetically engineered is no retcon. But if you look at Bashir's astonishment when he hits the bullseye, you can clearly see that this terrible storyline was never intended at all. I think Kira gets way too easy at the situation. Despite the solution they agreed to on Bajor, she neglected her job as first officer, and I can't understand how Cisco can be so lenient to her. Shakaar and the other members of the resistance group are interesting characters, so my rating is a weak 7 out of 10. So first of all, I totally agree with you about Bashir. That was another great example among many of how that retcon does not fit and was never intended and doesn't work, and is a shitty retcon about him being genetically engineered, because you're absolutely correct. He was shocked when he hit the thing, and they made it very clear that it wasn't just him pretending to not be good at darts. Yeah, so that's bullshit. But as far as Cisco being lenient on Kira, I gotta disagree with that, because Cisco, I think, would very rightfully be on Kira's side. He would see the need for her to go off and sort of stand up against Winn, because he himself noted how Winn was a terrible leader and overreacting, and he would say what she did was justified, and what she accomplished, which was Shakaar becoming First Minister, definitely justifies her actions, and I would actually think would be ridiculous if he punished her for that. I think, besides, she may be under his command, but she's not in Starfleet, so she couldn't reprimand her, court-martial or whatever, because she's not a Starfleet officer. As I said, she's under his command, but I don't see why he would be perfectly. I mean, he let Dax get away with going off to murder the albinos, so it seems like this is way less of an offense. But anyway, next comment is from Norman Buckwald, who says, Shakaar is most interesting from two standpoints. Seeing Kira's fighting Winn's forces with some of her fellow resistance friends, especially Lupasa and Pharrell, and seeing power-hungry Kai Winn choose petty means to be authoritarian and then gets rightfully defeated in the next election for First Minister. Not that there's flaws. It's odd that writers chose to have the mentioned Shakaar resistance from Duet be named after someone, and that person is formerly known as Ronan the Space Ghost, Crusher's family longed to bang. For many of those audience members who didn't say, wait, isn't that candle ghost? Yes, Kira better not light this candle. I guess the introduction of Shakaar is fine enough. Granted, for those of us who have seen the whole series, we remember him being whiny and even a bit uncaring of Kira going through labor, but that's beside the point. His introduction was okay, but I have to admit, as time went on, while at first he seemed a more suitable romantic interest to Kira than Baral, in hindsight I liked the character Baral better when not as a romantic interest. Shakaar seemed doomed as a romantic interest from the start. Yes, there are some things Winn is doing in this episode that can be compared to the Orange Autocrat. And finally, the biggest nit is the whole need for this equipment. I mean, Bajor is being considered to be part of the Federation. That is Starfleet overall goal, and why Cisco is at Deep Space Nine, right? Why don't they have freaking replicator technology and other technologies that can help with Bajoran farming? This is such a plot hole, not just here, but for the series. It's almost like, yeah, remember when some of the crew on Voyager are Maquis? Given all that, I'll give it 7 Winn gold hats that scream fascist Karen out of 10. So that's actually a very good point about the I talked about this before, and how a lot of these Bajoran episodes or storylines kind of fall apart when you realize that the Federation's a post-scarcity society and they're getting Federation help. So it makes no sense why they wouldn't just give them the replicators. And for that matter, they make a big deal about exporting food to other worlds, but why is that even necessary if everyone has replicator technology? Now, granted, maybe they still like to do. Some people like to do non-replicated food as novelty, just in the same way I own some records still, even though I still have Spotify and digital sources. It's still good to have the records, and some people are against replicated food, but that would seem more like a novelty than a necessity. And when they're talking about feeding the people of Bajor, why doesn't the Federation just give them replicated? It does make a lot of these stories fall apart, and I think that's the writers sort of falling back on present day situations because that's what they know, and not sort of thinking it through and thinking, hey, this actually doesn't translate to a 24th century setting. Doesn't actually make sense. They just don't consider it. And to be fair, most audience members actually go with it. It's just obsessed fans like myself that sort of notice these things and get a bit hung up on it. Wait a second, that actually doesn't work. But anyway, next comment is from Stephen Kennedy. He says, I don't mind Cisco not punishing Kira for what she did. If we didn't see the scene with Winn, it may have been another case of bad writing. Cisco let this go, as Winn is a wannabe dictator, and Cisco sees that. Shakaar finds his way off the Howard's candle and starts a new relationship with his females from his resistance cell. I'm not sure which episode it's from, but Gul Dukat did reference it. This was a good episode. However, why did Winn not ask the Federation for some soil reclamators? That would have been the end of the episode. The shortest episode ever, 3 minutes long. So my rating is 7. Yet another asshole Vulcan. I'm going to wait till Enterprise to drop a massive bombshell out of 10. Voyager Season 5 comment, maybe if Season 6 I liked more. Season 1, 2, and 4 are the best. Season 7 is the worst. Is the worst last season ever of shows I watched. Even the last season of 2.5 Men was better. The show became crap when Charlie Sheen went insane. That's really random to talk about Voyager Season 5 all of a sudden. I don't know what that's in reference to. But I don't think Voyager Season 7, as much as I don't like it, I don't think it's the worst last season ever. I think they're definitely... I've seen much, much worse last seasons. Game of Thrones comes easily. That probably takes the cake because it ruined the show. Dexter is another one. Yeah, and even talking about Star Trek, Picard last season was worse than Voyager Season 7. I'm sorry. I know everyone loves Picard Season 3, but no, those last 2 episodes completely ruined it. They were shit. But anyway, neither here nor there. I agree with you about Sisko not punishing Kira. I think it makes perfect sense why he didn't. Let's see. Yeah, that's another example. The Federation, if they didn't want to give them replicators, they could have given them the other versions of the soul reclamators, and that would have solved their whole problem. In fact, I think I heard someone point out when Kai Winn called Sisko down, instead of asking him for troops to arrest Shakaar, she should have just asked for soil reclamators, and I think that the Federation might actually been because they are helping them. They might have been like, okay, sure, here you go, problem solved. But as I said, this comes under like the writers sort of not thinking things through. Anyway, next comment is from Brandon Nilhouse, who says, I really hate Winn Adami. She's grass green and power hungry just because the prophets have never spoken to her personally. The most annoying thing about her is that she refers to Bajorans as child all the time. It is hard to care about the death of the First Minister of Bajor, who we've never heard of before. But giving government to the spiritual leader, that's just wrong. Church and state should never be combined. It's too close to the current political situation. I find it hard to care about Shakaar, who we have never met before. I'm not sure if his goofy neighbors are meant to be a couple or not. I'm always surprised how Bajor manages to survive with such an inept provisional government. Why can't the soul reclamators be replicated? Things go tits up when Winn sends in the military, of course. I like face-off between Shakaar's group and Lanaris Hullum's group when they realize that they cannot bring themselves to kill fellow Bajorans. I find Shakaar becoming the new First Minister terribly rushed. I'm not even going to comment on the O'Brien story except to say that's not how you play darts. And O'Brien hurting his soldier made me want to shout, it's a fake! 5, Odo's observing, and it has been my observation that one of the prices of giving people freedom of choice is that sometimes they make the wrong choice out of 10. That's a quote precisely. Thank you, Brandon. I kind of paraphrased it and butchered it earlier, but yes, that is the quote that I particularly love from this episode. Now, a lot of things you said I totally agree with, like the ending was a bit rushed. The sort of confrontation between the two Bajoran groups was interesting. But you know what? As far as like this is not how you play darts. I heard some other people say that, and I gotta be honest, that's the way I've always played darts. I used to have a dartboard when I was a kid, and we always played darts. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, they're saying that you're not supposed to aim for the bullseye. But that's the way I've always played. I played the bullseye was 100 points. Little circle outside of it were 50. The big rims were 25. So there must be different ways of playing darts, because the wrong way they're playing darts is the same exact wrong way I'm playing darts. I suppose I could just Google it and find this out, but too lazy to do that. Anyway, thank you, patrons, so much for your comments. So, my rating for Shakaar out of 10, I think I'm going to give this a 7. Very good. I was considering an 8. It was close to an 8. But it doesn't quite get there, because there are things I do really like about this episode. I like the portrayal of Winn as a terrible dictator wannabe, and Odo's line about how people can make the wrong choice, and it was satisfying seeing them rectify this choice by getting Shakaar to run against her. And I like that the seeing Kira reminisce with characters from her past, like that was good. But I think a lot of the storyline was just kind of rushed. The B story was terrible. That's probably why it doesn't get there to an 8. But yeah, a lot of the storyline was a bit rushed. They didn't really get into details of why a whole civil war would start with this. And as I said, it actually doesn't fit with what they were saying earlier about how Kai Winn was so popular. Like, she's so popular, how come like half the world was willing to start a war against her, like just like a couple days later? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. And yeah, and that whole ending with the compromise was a little bit anticlimactic, to be honest. So very close to giving it an 8, but I decided to go with a 7. So it's a strong 7 out of 10 for me. So that is it for my review of Shakaar. If you enjoyed this review, please be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe. All that stuff really helps me out. And if you'd really like to help me out, you could do so by supporting me on Patreon. There's a link in the description below with different tiers for different rewards. I have, you can request a video for me to do, or leave comments like I just did, or there's a series of videos where I revisit reviews I've already done. That's exclusively for Patreon supporters. Stuff like that you can check out if you're so inclined. So, let's see what's coming up next on the channel. Where are we? Shakaar. Okay, so Thursday be my review for the Bajor Season 1 finale, Learning Curve. Saturday, doing a Patreon requested video of the top 10 child actors in Star Trek. And then on Monday will be my review for the DS9 episode, Facets. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to check it out as I continue to cover Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager, one episode at a time, and also doing many other videos and many other Star Trek shows and other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.